Hello, I'm just going to do a quick video on the rock cycle because it can be a little bit confusing when your teacher isn't there to teach you it. Now, by now you should have went and answered the questions and you should have read the information. What I'm going to do now is show you a simplified version of the rock cycle. So when you went on bite size, you'll have seen the one that had all of the mountain. So the one that looks like the one in the question that I gave you. So you've got a mountain, you've got weathering happening, you've got it all compacting and becoming sedimentary rock, you've got heating up and becoming metamorphic, and then you've got it being heated again and becoming igneous rock. And it can get a little bit confusing, so we're going to use my simpler version of the rock cycle. Now, there are your three types of rock. You've got igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. We're going to start first by talking about the sediments because that's really where I feel it starts. But it could start at metamorphic rock and it could start at igneous rock because all of the three types of rock that you are seeing here have a green arrow, and that means that they can all become sedimentary rock at any point in the cycle. So you might get metamorphic rock that melts and goes in igneous rock, but then igneous rock could get weathered, but you could also have metamorphic rock just getting weathered and becoming sediments again, and you'll have a little cycle here. Now, we're going to talk about it from the start. So you've got a mountain, and you've got the three types of weathering that you should have read about. You've got biological, which might be a big tree pushing up and pushing the rock apart, and you get little sediments that form. It could be physical, where the wind's blown, and that has caused rock to come off, loose rock to fall off. And you might have chemical, which is my favourite because it involves acid rain. Now, when you've got these sediments, they're going to roll down the mountain and they're going to fall into a river. Now, what happens then is the river transports the sediments to the ocean. This part transportation is called erosion. When it gets to the river, it will compact and cement and become sedimentary rock. Now, this happens over billions and billions of years. It takes a long time for the sediments to travel and for the sediments to be weathered. So once this happens and they start to form in the bottom of the ocean, it will take billions of years. And that's why you get fossils in sedimentary rock. Now, sedimentary rock is formed through a lot of compacting. Think about pylon 61. Everyone's done pylon 61, where somebody lies on the floor, you shout pylon 61, and another person jumps on top of them, and then you jump on top of that person, and then you jump on top of that person. Think about all that weight that's pushing down on that poor person that's getting splattered at the bottom. And they will have loads of pressure pushing down on them. And that's what happens to sedimentary rock. And all the little bits of sediments are cemented together and become that type of rock. Now, if you've got sedimentary rock and there's loads of heat and pressure, it will turn into metamorphic rock. Now, metamorphic rock is cool because it has crystals in, or it might have ribbons that you can see. So when we look at it, when we come back to school and we might have a look at these rocks, you'll see that they've got ribbons in them. Or you can look at the lesson yesterday and see the pictures. Now, metamorphic rock can do two things. It can go back to sediment, or it can melt into magma. Now, magma is really interesting. It's the stuff that's in the big magma chambers that come out of the volcanoes. And it's hot and it's orange and it's red and it's really, really, really fiery. And it can become igneous rock. So when magma cools, it becomes igneous rock. Now, bite size talked about two different types. You have intrusive, which is when the magma travels so far up the volcano but then gets stuck in the rock and it can't come out of the ground. And then it cools and it becomes intrusive igneous rock. Now that poor soul has to sit there, it might get weathered and be turned into sediment eventually when it's pushed out of the earth, or it might get loads of heat and pressure again because it has come from the magma chamber and get turned back into metamorphic rock, and it'll try again. Now the really cool one is when the igneous rock explodes out of the volcano in the form of magma, and as it hits the ground it becomes lava. Now the lava will cool and it'll become igneous rock, and this type of rock, it almost looks like a glassy surface, and it might have loads of little holes in sometimes depending on what type of rock forms. And the glassy one's really cool because if you touch it, it's really smooth and the sun reflects off it, and we'll have a look at those when we get back to school as well. Now, what you need to think about here is that igneous rock can then go under a lot of heat and pressure and go back to metamorphic, or it can weather and erode and go back to sediments. Now, what I like to think about is that it starts with the sediments, becomes sedimentary rock, goes to metamorphic rock, and goes to igneous rock. And what is important is you think about how those changes happen. Because if you look, when it's cooled and it goes to igneous rock, to turn it back to magma, you do the opposite. And we've learned about cooling and melting, freezing and melting, but we've learned about cooling things down and melting things. So if you melt igneous rock, you make magma. If you put it under a lot of heat and pressure, it'll go back to being metamorphic rock. And you can see all the little arrows that tell you which way each thing will go. But it all follows a cycle. It happens over billions of years to create the different type of rocks that we see today. They all have different properties, they all have different uses, and they're all very important in how the world looks. So it is really good to know about rocks. I hope you are having a safe time and looking forward to come back to school eventually. I'm going to try and do some practicals up on YouTube to give you something to do. So look out for those. Bye.